Have you ever thought about how even the tiniest act of kindness can change a life? Let me tell you about Eddie. He wasn't just any bat. He was small, fragile, and completely helpless when he was found. And then there was Rihanna, the woman who decided to take on the challenge of saving him. This story is about their journey, a tiny bat fighting for his life and the incredible bond that grew between them. Eddie's story starts in the unlikeliest of places, a theme park in Gold Coast, Australia. He was born too early, way too small to survive on his own. Bats usually cling to their mothers as they fly, but Eddie didn't have the strength for that. One night, he slipped from his mom's grip and ended up on the pavement. Can you imagine being that tiny, that vulnerable, lying there with no way to protect yourself? It's heartbreaking. That's where Rihanna comes in. She's a volunteer who spends her time rescuing animals like Eddie. When she found him, he was barely clinging to life. She could have walked away, thinking he was too far gone, but she didn't. She picked him up and decided to give him a chance. At first, things weren't looking good. Eddie was so small and weak that he needed constant care. Rihanna had to feed him with a tiny bottle, drop by drop, to make sure he got enough to eat. Can you imagine the patience that takes? Day and night, she kept an eye on him, making sure he stayed warm and safe. Slowly, Eddie started to respond. What's amazing is that even though Eddie was so fragile, he had this little spark of personality. He loved belly rubs. Anytime Rihanna would gently rub his tiny belly, he'd relax completely. It's like he was saying, "I trust you." That kind of trust doesn't come easily, especially for a wild animal, but Rihanna had earned it. As Eddie got stronger, the bond between him and Rihanna grew. He started recognizing her voice. When he was hungry, he'd make little noises, calling out to her. It's crazy to think that this tiny bat, who'd been so close to death, was now full of life and showing so much personality. But saving Eddie wasn't just about keeping him alive. Rihanna knew that one day Eddie would have to go back to the wild. That's where he belonged. So she started preparing him for that. One of the biggest challenges was helping him learn to fly. It wasn't easy. Bats need strong wings to survive, and Eddie had a lot of catching up to do. Rihanna spent hours with him, letting him practice and build up his muscles. Did you know that bats have amazing vision? They can see just as well as we can during the day, and even better at night. Eddie was going to need those skills once he was out on his own. Rihanna worked hard to make sure he was ready. She even built a little flight aviary where Eddie could practice flying in a safe space. After weeks of hard work, the day finally came. Eddie was ready to be released. Rihanna had mixed emotions. On one hand, she was so proud of him. He'd come so far from that tiny, helpless bat she'd found on the pavement. But on the other hand, she was worried. Would he be okay out there? Would he find food? Would he be able to adapt? Releasing Eddie was one of the hardest things Rihanna had ever done. She'd spent 5 weeks caring for him, watching him grow and thrive. Letting him go felt like saying goodbye to a piece of her heart. But she knew it was the right thing to do. As she watched him take his first flight into the wild, she couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and hope. For weeks after Eddie's release, Rihanna kept an eye on the skies. Every time she saw a bat flying, she wondered if it was him. She'd think, "Is that Eddie? Did he make it?" She'd probably never know for sure, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that she'd given him a chance. Eddie's story is more than just a tale about a bat. It's a reminder of what's possible when we take the time to care. How many animals or even people are out there right now, needing someone to believe in them? How many lives could we change with just a little bit of kindness? This story isn't just about Rihanna and Eddie. It's about all of us. It's about the power of compassion and the difference we can make when we step up and do something, no matter how small it might seem. Maybe you can't rescue a bat, but you can help in other ways. Maybe it's volunteering at a shelter, donating to a wildlife organization, or just being kind to someone who needs it. If Eddie's story touched your heart, share it. You never know who might need a little inspiration today. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, hit that subscribe button. Together, we can make the world a kinder place, one small act at a time.